All right, so what up, you guys? I wanted to do a quick little presentation for those who are business owners, who are creative entrepreneurs, and who want to start a website. And I just wanted to do, as a designer, I feel like I was, my purpose is to show y'all some game and some updates of how much things cost. And I thought it was important to share this because a lot of business owners ask me this question when it comes to creating a website. And I felt like putting it all together in the presentation is probably the best thing. So let's dive in, right? So, why does it matter to have a website, or why is a website important, right? It's important because it's 24/7 storefront for your customers, your clients, for people to go to, somewhere you can go to and people can build that trust with you instead of sending them to a random, link tree. You guys also, it's kind of like a home and a place, for people to go to and for people to build trust with you over years and over time, right? And it's also important for growth because for those who don't know, when you have a website, it brings that traction through analytics, and it takes you to the same space, and it's kind of a home and a center for your people to go to, and it's a lot easier and a lot quicker for you to get processed or get paid and certain things like that because people know where to go to find you. And that's just my 2 cents, right? So, as far as how much does it cost to build a website, I broke this down into different plans and different examples of price points because everyone's price point is different depending on what they need with the website. And depending on what your budget is, depending on what your expectations are with your website, that kind of determines how much it costs to build a website, right? So, for those who are in I would say, a more, smaller budget, a DIY template website would probably cost around from $100 to $1,000, and that's mainly just getting the basic services done for your website, like getting the hosting, the domain, and the pre-built template, having some basic customization, nothing too fancy, nothing too extravagant, nothing associated with your brand. It's more of figuring out what your business wants and you coming up with the creativity. That's kind of more in the DIY range. And then for those who kind of want more, a little bit more customization, related to their branding, related to having professional design, who wants custom development within their website, whether it be, having certain forms generated, having automations connected to your website so that when someone emails you, you have an automated message, certain things like that in branding. And also mobile optimization, meaning that it could be generated both on a phone and on a computer. That's kind of ranging from around $3,000 to $10,000. And then when it comes to those who are interested in having an agency, work on their website, or who have different expectations as far as e-commerce, meaning a shop, and who have multiple products that need to be, transferred or generated into a newer and more up-to-date and modern website, and who need payment integrations as far as payment processing and having, Stripe payments connected and integrated to your site, making sure that all your features are all in order. That's more into the 15 to 50,000 range. And I know this seems very, broad in this as far as the ranges, but depending on who you hire and depending on the amount of people or the either the team that you have or the basic goals that you have for your website, that kind of determines how much the cost will be as far as how much a designer would charge you. Now, for me, I like to give out these certain options because I feel like every client is different. Like, you wouldn't want to charge, and this is good for my designers who are kind of tuning in as well, because, like, when you're charging for your website, you don't want to charge the same as the amount of, doing all this work when it comes to an e-commerce site versus, a single solopreneur owning a bakery shop. You know what I'm saying? It's different goals and it's different relations as far as how much you charge for. And I think that's why it's hard when people don't want to hire designers, because they don't know the expectations going into how much the cost would be. So as far as understanding a website, right, and understanding the other options that you have, just to, I guess, go in depth as far as what I mean by the explanations that I just showed you guys, like a DIY template builder would kind of be something when you go to, like, Wix or Squarespace, and they already have the websites kind of pre-made. I also sell pre-made templates of my websites as well that I like to show, because having a pre-made template is kind of helpful because you don't have it's different from the options from the store. Like, I feel like when you go to, like, websites like Squarespace or Wix and you look at just the templates that they have, like, you have to understand there's so many people going on their site, so you're kind of just repurchasing the same site that all different people have. Now that's fine, especially if you're a solopreneur, you don't have a large budget to hire a designer. But when you're okay with the limited customization and the scalability and the branding, if you're okay with that, then that's kind of good and expected for you, right? For those who kind of want more of a development side as far as looking at your website, not only from a visual point of view, but more from like an analytical point of view, meaning like you want certain things in your website for it to grow, or you want, certain SEO features, or you want certain things to be implemented in your site, like let's say a blog, right? You want a blog so that you have attached content to have to grow your website over time. That's kind of when it starts to come into the customization and the developing of your site. And those are for people who are hiring, advanced freelancers or small agencies. That's kind of in the realm for you. And then when you want to hire like an expert team or an expert design team, this is good for my businesses who kind of want to scale and who are already making like really good money, as far as like they've already established their goals of their website, but they want to kind of bump it up a little bit more as far as like going in depth with the strategic planning, the quality, making sure there's certain support systems or even automations in place. And I mean like advanced automations so that it kind of sinks into your like CRM system, all this type of jazz, right? That would be like an expert partner that you would want to hire, right? And based off of these, this kind of fits within your budget, your technical skills that you have as an entrepreneur, or, as a, even if you're not an entrepreneur, even if you're a admin person working on, assisting with working on a website or a team, that's kind of like the business goals that you kind of have to look for within your website. And as far as going to some of the expenses when it comes to a website, I really try to break this down into like a couple categories that are a lot simple and a lot easy to remember. So to just start, your domain is the first thing, right? Your domain is basically the www whatever or lowdesigns.whatever or .com or whatever the name of your website is. That's basically the domain, right? Depending on where you go to get your domain, that's how much you pay. Usually it's like a yearly fee because no one really wants to pay a month for the actual registration of your website, because that can kind of run into problems. So that's why I recommend getting an annual fee. Same thing with the hosting. The hosting is basically, let's say you are going to Wix to build your site on, right? Because in order for you to get a site up, you have to have it hosted somewhere, unless you were to code it by yourself, and good luck with that, because I mean, everyone can make sites in so many different ways, but I feel like if you want to have something that's a lot simple, a lot easy, like if especially in your time frame as well. I feel like I didn't put this much into the presentation, but depending on your time frame, like if you're trying to launch a site within a year versus when you're trying to launch a site within 3 months, your hosting is really important, because you don't want to build your website in a website builder that is hard to design in, or it's hard for you to design in. If you want to go in and make changes in the future, you don't want to kind of run into any issues. It's kind of important to think about that when going into the cost, right? And that can range from about 100 to 500 for the year. They have monthly plans for those who want to join like Wix or Squarespace. I always recommend Squarespace, but we'll go into that later in this presentation. But that's just kind of like a rule of thumb of other costs, right? And then when it comes to maintenance and updates, this kind of depends on you and your goals with your business. But if you want something as far as technical support, if you want a designer to kind of come in and check your website to do some SEO stuff or other things like that. But when it comes to the maintenance of it, kind of like looking at the data in the background or making sure the photos are, all intact so that your website runs smoothly, like that's more of the maintenance and the updates of your website, right? And then when it comes to the SEO, this is kind of more of like a marketing standpoint. So if you want your website to actually get views, because that's the thing, and that's the misconception I think what people have about websites. Just because you post a website or you launch a website, that's just kind of part one of the next couple steps you need to do. The next couple steps is actually getting it ranked, actually having sources that goes back to your website, backlinks, all these other things kind of go into play so that your website not only is, aesthetically pleasing to your customers, but it's also usable and workable and sustains your business, right? And that's the next step. And then I guess understanding the two important things when it comes to investing in your website. is obviously going to be the domain and the web hosting. I kind of, went in depth as far as the domain, basically the name of your website. And it's basically kind of your own brand identity. And that's kind of something you kind of have to think about. It's kind of important to, it's also when you think about your brand name, right? Like you want something simple and easy that your customers will remember. Like if I put like, you know, lawrenceportfolio.net dot whatever versus like, lowdesigns.studio, lowdesigns.com. But then it's like I go on Google and you find different things. That's kind of causes like other issues as well because no one wants to click on the wrong link when looking for your website. And then the next step would be like web hosting, right? The two main important things. And you have to also consider this because this is where all your storage for your website goes as far as all your content, everything that links back will link back to this website. And then also making sure that the access of your website is ran smoothly, and also just making sure you have a good payment plan as far as if you want to pay monthly or annually for your website is something that you should consider, right? So let's go in depth of just domain name sites, providers that I kind of, recommend as well. So as far as GoDaddy, this is kind of well-rounded, I think, but within everyone. I feel like everyone knows where to go to kind of get a web domain, and GoDaddy's always the go-to for that. Me personally, I like Google Domains because it's $12 for the year. I feel like $1 for your website a month isn't that bad. That's just me personally. That's kind of my favorite ones. But again, if you're thinking about doing Google domains, you may want to hire a designer for that just because of the systems that are in place. Squarespace domains. So for those who don't know about that, when you get a Squarespace website, they have other specials and deals for you to get a free domain through Squarespace. That's kind of another reason why I think it's helpful, or why I recommend my clients to go to Squarespace as well. Just because it kind of gets all of that out the way as far as where to go to get your domain. You kind of have a free domain within that as well. And then they also have Bluehost. I'm not too familiar with Bluehost, but I put that on there just because I feel like other people should have options as far as bundling it, especially if you're going with like a different website builder, either Webflow or other things like that. I feel like they have their own hosting as well, and that's kind of another thing to look into. And then this is kind of one of my favorite things, I guess, to explain the important parts of picking the right website builder for you. I feel like every platform has a different goal, right? So let's say Wix, like I think Wix is perfect for those who are like solopreneurs or who kind of have a little bit of a designer flow to them. For those who want to set up portfolios or have small businesses, I think that's good. But me personally, I am not a fan of Wix like I used to be. I'm more of a fan of Squarespace, and that's just because not only because of the aesthetics of Squarespace, but just because of the usability of how the mobile optimization and the tablet screen and how they're all kind of combined together. I think as a designer, it was kind of easy for me to design my clients' websites and then make it easier to design for mobile. Now, I haven't used Wix in a while as well, so maybe one day I'll do a tutorial on how to use that. But Squarespace has always been my go-to because of the easy way to create your website and to create other things like that. And it's just been simple for me, right? And then the next one will be Shopify. Shopify is good strictly for people who have a shop and who want to make sales only through a shop. I feel like if you have other things you want to integrate it, I feel like it's not the best. But when I had a Shopify store, I loved it. I thought it was so easy to create products, to create, listings, to list my products properly, to make sure that it was all integrated. I think it was the best, hands down the best e-commerce platform to make my shop for. Now, when I wanted to do other things like create my blog or create my content that connects to my website, that's kind of why I switched back to Squarespace. But Shopify is also a good site, and I'm pretty sure they have deals like that $1 deal for a month or whatever they have going on. They have deals, and I think that's also helpful as well. It's a little bit pricey, but I think it's worth it if you have an e-commerce shop and it's doing well, right? Squarespace and Wix also has the e-commerce platform or the feature within it, and that's why there's kind of ranges within the prices, because in order for you to get a site, right, you have to look at what features you want in your site. Like, let's say you want an e-commerce shop. It's going to be a little bit more pricey compared if you just want a simple one form website. And then the last one I put on here is also WordPress. WordPress is good for like people who write blogs, who kind of want like certain functionalities with it, especially if you're the type 2 that's kind of like a blogger or a content creator, or who is someone who is very specific in their writing. I feel like it's great for writers, but I feel like I've dabbled in WordPress like a long time ago. But for me personally, I just feel like it's a little outdated for as a tech person, but to each his own. And as far as the monthly cost and the yearly cost, right? So these are the ranges that I've kind of put in general format. But as far as the ranges, right, it could be 16 a month. It could be 49 a month, depending on what you want in your site. So let's say, and I feel like there should be more ways to kind of add what features you want in your site, but it's really what plans they offer for what site you have. So meaning like $16 would be the basic site. If you don't want nothing too in depth, you don't want like specific customization, you just want a website with your name on it, like that will be strictly $16 a month or $192 a year, right? But let's say you want like your business formatted website. So let's say you want certain forms integrated, you want to have SEO features that you could edit, certain things like that you have to look into. And that's when the price starts kind of rising up, because sometimes they make limitations, especially with Squarespace. I started to notice they have limitations on the what you could do with your website when it's like a $16 plan versus what you can do with like a $40 or $50 monthly plan, right? And these are just estimates. They have taxes and other things like that, but I wanted to give a range because these would be the cost. And again, you have to also counter and add your annual cost for that as well. Now, it may not be a lot, but depending on what you need in your site, that's something you have to determine how much you want to pay. And again, just to have a little bit of an overview, and I wanted to kind of bring in all the other aspects of what I talked about in this presentation, not just the domain and hosting, but as far as, let's say, like you are a business website, you have certain CRM systems that you want in place, and you want certain security, for people who have their privacy policy and all of that other things. Those things are also can be integrated in your website, but again, you can also hire a service, and these prices are more if you were to hire an additional service, especially for those if you want to hire like, content creators or anything like that to put in SEO, or technical support for anyone that needs certain features implemented in your website, like creating photos that upload quickly and making sure they're a little bit cheaper, and then like making sure your security is up to date. Like, these are other features, but again, these are also optional. I feel like certain website builders that you go to, they already have this built in. But if you want more of an in-depth thing, or certain one of these categories means a lot more to you than the other, that's when you can start investing into your website. So I don't think when you guys see these prices, don't be like alarmed, because depending on what you need in your website, like if you want the basics or something more integrated, and depending on the size of your company, the size of your business, that's kind of what determines the prices relating to these features, right? So don't be alarmed. Just know that these costs can also add into your website. And then as far as hiring a designer, right? What to expect when hiring a designer. Now, there's certain levels to hiring a designer and hiring an agency, and hiring for what you need and what you need your team or people to do, right? So even though design studio is still counted as an agency, me and myself, though, I still do freelance work and I'm still a designer independently. But I put this in there just as an example so you guys can have like a visual point of what that would mean. So let's say like you hire a designer, right? And it could range from like 25 to 150 an hour, right? Now that may seem expensive for some, but again, these are price ranges depending on what you need in your site and if you're willing to do the work yourself. That's kind of why I put the DIY in there, because sometimes you can hire a designer, but they can really do just the back end stuff that you don't know how to do. and you can be able to take care of the front end. That's why I like to do templates. That's why I think I like to do the basic stuff, because I know people now have the ability to do more when it comes to the technical side. But as far as still needing a designer, like sometimes there's certain things like putting in code that you don't know, or understanding certain features on how your content works. And sometimes you need a designer to explain that to you, and that shouldn't be bad. I think when hiring a designer, though, you should always look at their portfolio, look at their credibility, look at the things that they have done, even if they haven't. Like, that's why it's kind of suspicious with Fiverr and all these other platforms, because you can hire someone for that, but do you want um that same quality as well? That's something that you also have to consider. Quality is important when it comes to hiring anyone. When it comes to hiring a designer versus an agency with 10 people, it's the quality of work that you're going to get once you pay this, person or company. And then an agency is good for people who have also an agency, or people who have a brand themselves. It's a lot easier to create more with the website, and a lot quicker time frame, just because when you have multiple designers and they have different projects doing the same thing, it's a lot quicker to get that done. But it's also integrated into more customization, more experted levels of problem solving, making sure everything fits well, right? And then also people have like a full service of what they offer, from both like hiring one or two freelancers to hiring a team. That's kind of where I kind of sit in, as far as trying to understand, even with me, I offer like, that's why I offer branding services and not just web design services. Because when you offer branding, it's kind of important to know that in order to have a good website, you need to have a good brand in place as well. But, that doesn't mean go and just hire a brand team and then hire a designer in between that. Figure out what goals that you have for your business, and then figure out what you want to achieve within your website, that you could transfer either within your brand or use your brand to transfer into the website. It mainly should be the brand that transfers in within the website. But, understanding your business goals, things change, understanding how you need a website. And if that's your goal right now, then that's something you should always focus on. And as far as next steps, um, again, what I just said, assess your business goals and needs, understanding who your target audience is and your outcome. What features do you want with your website? Understanding your budget. Do you want to do DIY stuff? Do you want to hire someone? Do you want to do both? And asking someone, you guys can always refer that to me. And once you start asking and then you start exploring your options, always do your research. Like I said, look at everyone's portfolio, look at their testimonials, looking at the services they offer. Do they offer more services than just design? Understanding your like strategic way of how you're going to build your website is the way that you kind of have to go about, and it's kind of giving you a game plan. Like that, this is the whole point of like me trying to give you guys this information, because I think when you go into things blindly, you start paying for things that you don't need to. And that's kind of how I even felt when I was using and spending all this money on website builders that I really didn't need, or didn't feel comfortable designing in, but started to notice the importance of it. And then the next step would be to just take the first step, and not to be scared and not to be afraid to just ask questions. I feel like a lot of designers, not just me, are very open to talking about how much it costs to make the work, talking about what would be the next steps to create work for you, whether it be to hire you or not. And depending on who you are, your goals, depending on the type of person you are too. I think that's something that I kind of started relating to my clients, is what did my clients represent and what did I represent, and my values for my business, and how could we relate to each other. That's when I started noticing I had the best clients in that aspect, because when you start working with people who have the same values as you, it's more than just the work to them, and it's more than just making sure the work gets done. It's kind of an emotional aspect to it, as far as hiring a designer that has the same values as you and will put in more of the work than just the basic design stuff. And I hope that explains a lot. And for those who don't know, I offer like branding and other things like that. And I'm very open to working with business partners. So if you guys want to connect, feel free to do that. I offer brand identity, UX, UI, other things like that. And I'm also going to be attaching other forms as well. I'm going to be attaching some guides below if you guys want some resources. They're going to be free. And I also have a paid creative guide as well. And it will basically, the guide that I have attached, that's the paid one, is mainly for those who kind of like want all of the business documents in one, whether you're a creative designer who is hiring people or whether you are a business owner that is trying to get your creative stuff in order. It has a brand identity template and all that other stuff. So I think that'll be important for those who are still in the process of still creating a strong brand. And I think having a guide and all these other contracts and forms that will kind of help you to go within your next steps with your business, I think that'll be the next important things. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you guys want custom certain plans of what you want designed, or if you have any questions about services, I'm always here. And always remember to do what your art desires. And bye bye.